Welcome to Innovating Clinical Trials, the podcast designed for clinical research professionals eager to deepen their understanding of clinical trials through concise, insightful segments. Join your hosts, Liam Eves and Ted Trafford, as they uncover the core issues in clinical research, reflect on the industry, and challenge conventional wisdom.
Hello, Ted. How are you doing, sir?
Liam. Oh, I'm well. I mean, I got a bit of a cold still, but hopefully it starts to improve soon. You can probably hear it in my voice a little bit.
It sounds great. It sounds Barry White. I think the listeners are going to. It sounds sexy. It's sexy.
You don't want me to sing. Trust me, you don't want me to sing.
That's the next episode.
Oh my goodness, a song? Oh, yeah. Home, sure. Yeah, I'll perform a lot of things, but I don't think we'd lose listeners for sure.
There's nothing. I always remember at one of my. I was thinking it was my 21st birthday. Had organised karaoke for everyone.
Oh my goodness.
And they forced me up there, and it was one of the I'm not easily embarrassed and things like that, but my God, it was painful. But yeah, belted out as much as I could.
Good for you.
Yeah, you've got to go with the flow, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So what do you have prepared for us today?
Yeah, so I've been thinking a lot recently, too much probably, about clinical trial delivery as a whole. And one of the things that I've been building out for the last maybe 17 years or so is a framework. And the framework has been like an evolution over that time, because I'm an absolute nerd when it comes to these things. Simply because I'll just caveat that with that. I think that it enables us to distill a very complex process with multiple actors, systems, processes, and so on and so forth into something that's a bit more manageable you can eat it a little bit at a time. And in all honesty, it simplifies it for me, so I can understand it better in my own mind. And that's not to say, it's a lot of these things that I'll go through have been tried and tested over the years. So, the methodology has helped me deliver at a 97.3% rate. It's helped me build out possibly one of the largest private research sites where we were processing over 85,000 patients a year.
Wow, that's an incredible number.
Yeah, it's large. And I think that it allows, I almost call it like an industrialization, because you're following a set playbook. So this is effectively a series of playbooks that I've developed over the years and will sort of enable people to move that little bit faster. So the frameworks that I'll talk through today is part of a proprietary system that we've been building, as say, over the years. And the bit that I'm going to talk about is part of it is, you can think of it almost as a 2x2 matrix. So you've got, in one bucket of the four, you've got the medical, scientific, and regs. So this is where we typically spend a lot of our time when we're designing trials and so on and so forth. Then you've got the operational and logistics, which forms the second bucket. A third one, which is around the leadership. So the leadership of your trial and your trial delivery. And then there's a fourth one that is not really spoken about that much, but as we'll go into, I think it's possibly one of the most important, which is behavioral science, or the psychology of the study. So what I do is that whenever thinking about delivering a clinical trial, whether we're thinking about the strategy, any particular task or action, we need to apply this matrix, or what I call these four lenses, to the trial delivery. So everything needs to be looked at through these lenses, so you can get this multifaceted view of the impact of your decision on a trial. So I'll go through some examples to sort of bring it to life a little bit. So we spend a lot of our time around the medical, scientific, and regs piece because we it's the area that we know. It's things like the protocol development, FDA review process, and so on and so forth. So when we think about, for instance, like protocol, and we start applying these lenses to them, we know that if you actually spend some time, we know that trials are getting more complex, but we know that when you start to optimize the design and simplify wherever possible, you can have a massive impact on the speed in which you travel and also the cost. So they estimate that just by simplifying as much as you can reduce the actual or increase the speed by about 13%, the delivery speed, and also reduce the cost around sort of 10%. So it does that by reducing a lot of the unnecessary complexity and then the subsequent amendments later down the line. So actually taking some time up front before you start to run, let's walk or crawl even first and stress test these things before we actually pull the trigger is a massive advantage. Then you've got things like, which obviously everyone will know, but when we look at improving the sort of FDA review process, is that if we can engage with FDA and others frequently, but also more importantly earlier in the process, it can significantly improve obviously our insights into what they're looking for and so on and so forth, approvals. It can reduce the trial cost. Some have actually suggested that it can reduce the cost and duration by around 10% equally. So there's a lot of value in there. So I won't go through everything because we've got quite a laundry list. Then when we start to look at the operations and logistics, here we need to consider all things operational in nature. And it's often about translating the protocol to almost like an operational manual. But it also needs to cover some of the things that we don't think about. So like we've mentioned on past podcast recordings, things like the actual communication are things like how well are we communicating at what time, who is responsible for that. It can also be more complex things like, can we actually put in place standardized contracts with sites so that we can actually set up things much quicker? I mean, there's estimates to say that it's around 12% quicker when you go to a standardized contract, right? Which again has massive value and also illuminates the fact that, working with really good site networks is a great way to go about this. But it can also be the aspect of okay, what are the logistics pieces around how we're educating site staff? Are they running dry runs as an example? Can they give us feedback on how we can optimize the process and so on and so forth?
Yeah, are we engaging them at the right time in order to solicit that feedback? Because, during the feasibility process, that's not the time to get site feedback on a protocol.
Absolutely. So there's all these and I often think it's there's never going to be one big thing that kills you, right? It's all the paper cuts that just get to you overall. And it's about really being quite detailed with that operational and thinking outside. It's not just having a system in place. It's maybe having, again, as we've discussed previously, having a centralized document that actually lists the systems and how to access them and so on and so forth that grease the wheels for the operational delivery. So that's some of the just some of the nuances. I think that for me, the next component is often the most overlooked, and it's as I said before, it's the psychology of the study. So, for instance, when we think about the output of a trial process, the output is to extract data to say if a new medication works or not, right? So essentially, all our work is to produce the patient information leaflet within the medicine package. But when you boil down the inputs and what we're trying to achieve, it's essentially a group of people, highlight people, working together on a common goal. It's the people and the psychology of the individuals and the group as a whole that become critical. So the behavioral science is the third category that we really need to consider. And this is really like behavioral science is essentially just, it's a focus on how people interact, make decisions, and also respond to various, situations. So if we take, for example, feasibility as a good one. Now, when you consider a great performing site, I'm going to put words into your own mouth, but it'd be great to get your take here, is that I suspect that you're going to be looking more on what is the individual, i.e. the PIs, are they interested, motivated, and so on and so forth as one of the biggest factors.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting you brought up this whole topic, because one of the big things that interferes with site selection in clinical trials and the whole feasibility process is the psychology for the principal investigator and the fear of missing out, and just the thought process that, well, the study isn't ideal, or the timing's not great right now for our site to take this on, but if I don't do this study, they're not going to come back to me. I might miss out on the phase 3 study that they might do 18 months from now. And so I don't want to burn that bridge.
Yeah. Yeah. And that it's such an important feature of what we do, but is often overlooked, because when we think about site feasibility, we ask the questions of the effectively like their ability to access patients, their capabilities from a technological perspective. Have you got a minus 40 freezer, fridge, so on and so forth. But there are no psychological factors. We don't take into consideration motivation as a basic one, right? So how motivated is this individual? But not just the PI, but also the actual site staff. Because you ultimately I would rather have a team of highly motivated individuals that perhaps don't have as many patients in the mix, but are highly motivated, highly driven, and so on and so forth, than a low motivation with high patients in the mix.
Yeah, and that's where sometimes the best performing sites in a program can be sites that are new to clinical research, because they're hungry and they're so excited and so interested, and they're just going to dive in and put everything they have into the study to prove themselves.
Absolutely.
As opposed to, the site that's got 50 other studies ongoing, and this is just another study that they're adding in. So
absolutely. And these sort of lenses become really, really important, because, another aspect is that PI may be, one of the most important people, but the team that sat behind them is ridiculous, because they're going to be doing the vast majority of the legwork, right, and actually delivering. So you also see it in things like patients. So this is a really good example of, we categorize patients based upon the disease rather than their personality. So we just make this assumption that every individual is going to be, motivated to the same lines. Whereas I'd much rather, and this is one of the things that we do, is that look at those personality subtypes and then adapt the messaging and things like that to talk and to resonate to some of those things, rather than just saying, well, these people have all got like disease A, and all these people with disease A, of course they're going to want to try our new drug. It doesn't quite work like that, right? So I think it's ultimately, I could go on and on and on and on a bit more about this, but as it's quite a grey area, I think that it's something that a lot of us don't really spend the time to think about, and it's not only just the patients, right? It's also the psychology of the team that is delivering the actual study, which leads me on to the fourth point, which is around leadership, which is the sort of final lens. And we know that trials are always going to go wrong, right? That something always happens. And the question for me is, who are the people that are leading the troops? Who are the people that have got their hands up? They're getting stuck into the problems of delivery. Have you got those individuals that will be on the battleground for you? Or, are you effectively paying for headshots in a sales document, otherwise known as a proposal, from organizations? You want those individuals that walk the walk, talk the talk, know how to solve things, and are ultimately there for the individuals that need them, that are maybe not experienced. You need as flat a structure as possible, so that understanding the ability and leadership qualities is critical for sure. So they're my sort of four lenses, if you will, of part of our. I think it's a complex dance, right? And we can't just purely think that science, medical and regulatory is the only things when delivering. It's actually more. It's that ship has sailed by the time it gets into the hands of the operators.
Yeah, and that's often where it falls apart.
Yeah,
amazing. Well, thanks for bringing this up today. I think this is something we can come back to and dig into individual pieces quite a bit more.
For sure. Look forward to it. Thank you,
awesome.
sir.
Yeah, have a great day.
You too. Bye.